Grant, I recently saw you talk about the importance of small and medium-sized businesses building a brand, even when selling in a business-to-business environment. Aren't brands for Nike and Pepsi and Barclays Bank, rather than John Smith's metal fabricators?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that is a problem with brands, because as soon as you start talking brands to people, they do think about the Apples and the Nikes and the Coca-Colas. And of course, if you're running a small niche business, in Sussex somewhere, then you think, well, that's not me. I'm not a global business. I don't need a brand in that way. But the thing is, you have to understand what brands are there for. And really what brands are there for is they're there to make it easy for customers to buy. Because what they do is they mitigate risk. We call it in the branding world low variance, right? So I'll give you an example. I'm walking down the aisles of Tesco's and my wife has given me a shopping list and it says tomato soup on there. And she hasn't specified what she wants. And I'm now walking down the aisle at Tesco's and there's 185 different types of tomato soup staring at me. And I'm like, I don't know. And then two jump out at me. And the two that jump out at me, Campbell's and Heinz. And you look at them and you go, oh, I'll just throw one of those in my trolley, because how wrong can I be, if I go home and I bought Heinz or Campbell's? My wife's going to say, what tomato soup do you get? I say, I've got Campbell's. She go, oh, fine. Whereas if I go off some brand she's never heard of, I got Smith's tomato soup. You go, who? What's that? And suddenly, why did you buy this one? I've never heard of this one. So what brand does is it mitigates risk. And, when you're a consumer, you're always worried about making a bad decision. We always say that consumers try and avoid regret. And when you're a business to business purchaser, what you're trying to avoid is blame. You don't want your customers or your colleagues or your employees to say, why are we doing this? So, and the best example is in the B2B world is that classic line, no one got fired for buying IBM. If you're the IT director at a company and people say, which servers did we go with? And you say, we bought IBM's, everybody just say, oh, okay. No questions asked. And so brands make it easier for people to buy. And therefore, even if you're, a small manufacturing business, in East Sussex somewhere, you're not trying to take over the world and be known by 7 billion people. You still want to make it easy for your marketplace to buy your products. And therefore, brand will enable you to do that in a way that almost no other mechanism will.
That's very interesting. And what's the best way to go about that if you are John Smith's Metal Fabricators, Grant?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a number of steps. The first thing is you've got to make sure that you get your brand architecture correct. Because, if you're going to spend time promoting your brand, have you got your market positioning right? Is the message right? Is what the brand stands for correct? Have you got all the ducks in a row, as it were? You don't want to start promoting something that isn't quite right. So you've got to make sure that you've got all of that stuff 100% correct. So that's the first thing to do. Once you have, then the way that you go about it is really, it's about investing in what we call brand salience. It's a horrible marketing term, but forgive me for that. But salience is about establishing reputation and credibility. And therefore, I always say to people, you can't build brand on Facebook. And the reason why you can't build brand on Facebook is no one goes onto Facebook and sees a Facebook ad and goes, oh, they must be doing well. They're on Facebook. Because everybody knows that Facebook's as cheap as chips. You can run an ad campaign on Facebook for 20 quid, right? And therefore, you don't build any salience. By the way, I'm not saying you shouldn't be on Facebook. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can't build brand on Facebook. Whereas, think about sponsoring a local football team. Think about sponsoring a youth group. Think about sponsoring awards. If there's an awards ceremony within, well-known awards for a particular industry or a particular body or a particular thing that matters. Those kind of things build salience, because no one thinks that you think, because we sponsored that award, the phone's going to ring off the hook the next day. No one thinks that. So therefore, if you've sponsored an award, they must have a bit of cash to throw around. They must be doing okay. And that's how you build salience. That's why TV works, because people often talk about the wastage in TV, right? But the fact is, people are just impressed. When you're on, they must be a decent company. They must be a decent size. They must be doing okay. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to afford TV advertising, right? So obviously, you know, John Smith's metal fabricators aren't going to go do some enormous TV campaign, but what's their equivalent? Is it sponsoring awards? Yeah. Is it what are the things that are seemingly a little bit wasteful, but actually get them in front of their target market with a bit of credibility and salience? But, oh, they must be doing all right. It's those kind of activities that work from a brand building perspective.